Welcome to In the Arena of Success. This podcast is where courage meets opportunity. I'm your host, Henry Beeman, and every week we step into the arena with visionaries, innovators, and trailblazers from all walks of life. We dive deep into the heart of success and uncover the strategies, the struggles, and the unwavering spirit of those who overcome. The real question is, are you willing to step into the arena and fight for your success? Because in this arena, success is not a destination, it's a journey, and it starts right now. All right. Joining me today is the legendary Jay Abraham. He's a business strategist who's transformed over 10,000 companies worldwide. He's known for uncovering hidden assets and overlooked opportunities. Jay's innovative methods drive explosive profit growth, and today we're going to get a sneak peek into the mind of the man that Forbes calls the real thing. We're going to discover some of his secrets, and Jay, I just can't thank you enough for coming on with me today.
My pleasure. I hope I can add value to your audience, and let's get on with it. Let's try to give your listeners the best possible outcome we can. Okay.
Absolutely, and I start every podcast with the same 6 questions. And the first one is, where's your hometown and what is it known for?
Well, I come from Indianapolis, Indiana, and anybody that knows anything, that's the home of the 500-mile Indy race, and that's where it started. And it's a very big deal, and it was a big deal when I was there. And that's probably the best thing. Today they have the Pacers and they have the Colts and they have a lot of other companies that are based there. Eli Lilly's is based there, the pharmaceutical company. But really, the 500-mile race is what people think about Indy, and that's how I think about it.
Do you prefer cats or dogs?
I've always liked dogs. My daughter-in-law has cats, and during COVID, all my kids, we all have pugs. I have 2 pugs. My son has 2 pugs. Another son has a pug, and my other son and his wife have cats. And during COVID, we had 5 pugs and 2 cats all hanging around the house. A big home, but it was really funny. The cats, when one of the dogs is blind and has no vision and can't hear it, would walk by the cat, and the cat would never hurt it, but it would smack it on the back butt, and the dog it was very cute. But I prefer dogs, but I've grown a little more um, regard for cats. When you get to see their personalities, they're interesting.
They definitely have a lot of personality for sure.
Yes.
So the next question is what kind of music do you like to listen to?
I'm obsessed with 70s and 80s. I don't even like the stuff that's popular now. My wife is very into it. I like music that nostalgically brings me back to
Hmm.
my young adult times. And just as an example, I took 3 of my children, actually 2 of my kids and 1 friend, back in, I don't know, the 2000 and something, to the Led Zeppelin reunion in London. I like it that much.
That's incredible. I just recorded a interview with Steve Rizzo, and he and I spent a lot of time talking about the Beatles on that podcast. So
Yeah,
absolutely, you and I get along well musically.
yeah. I mean, I'm stuck in a time warp, I guess. I just really enjoyed, and it energizes me. But I think we have psychological reference to times in our life that were, or memorable, and sometimes good, bad. But those are much more vivid to me because a lot of things happened to me in the 70s and 80s,
Mm,
and so I have an affinity for that.
absolutely. So what are you currently reading?
There's a book that just came to me from a friend called Intention. I haven't read it yet, but I tend to read a lot of. I'm into some classic business stuff that is enduring and not really as timely. And I'm into more strategic and macro and integrative, and I guess I'd call it holistic business thinking rather than tactical. So I
Mm,
like things that are really really immersive. And I don't read with the passion that I used to. I'm very lucky. I have many, many dozens of clients around the world who are obsessive readers, and I get the distillation of their reading from them, but not at the level that I should. But I love older books that are classics that basically endure all time and all vagaries and all the changes.
To follow on that, one of my favorite books that's my collection as of right now is A Message to Garcia by Elbert Hubbard. I have an
Yeah.
original first edition
Oh, that's great.
1880s on the shelf over here, and talking about a business classic that will stand forever.
Yeah,
I think things like that and Obvious Atoms and those sorts of things just never fade. They never disappear. They
I have
always will
a
resonate.
collection of not just Obvious Adams, but the other five books that whatever his name was, I can't remember, it was Robert Updegraff wrote. And I had The Ginger Cure and a bunch of books that were very profound in their elegance, but quite enduring in their relevance. So it's very fascinating. But yeah, that's good. I like the fact that you like classical. I mean, say there was a time when people had to understand the human condition
Yes.
in a very clear way because they didn't have the benefit of technology or graphics or sexuality. They had to really understand, the immutable drives of a human being. It's very fascinating. Yeah.
So we're changing gears a little bit, and the next question is, who is your biggest inspiration in life?
Wow. I'm in a very awkward place to answer that because, unlike most people, I've probably had 200 mentors, and I have so many impressive and rarefied in their quality, in their intellect, and in their strata uh, colleagues that I've been either have befriended me, have been my clients, or have mentored, or I have mentored, and through osmosis rubbed off. I couldn't begin, I was friendly with the late Stephen Covey. Tony Robbins is a colleague of mine. Damon John is a colleague of mine. Is Stephen Mr. is a colleague of mine. Brian Tracy, I hung out with all the time. So I mean, just lots of interesting people. I'm friendly with Anthony Scaramucci, very broad spectrum of diversity. I have this probably too many. I've had entrepreneurs early in my career that set me on a very lofty trajectory. So it'd be very hard to, and it would be a disservice to everyone else if I hoisted one above them all. I'm an integration of lots of much brighter, much more dimensional, much richer in worldview people giving me a little drippings of their being and sort of that integration.
Absolutely. And that's something that I've found of most successful people. There's always an entourage of people around them who've reached that hand out and fed and mentored and shaped how people develop. Simon Sinek has the book Start With Why. I've coming from the military background. We always have a mission statement, and the mission statement starts with the five W's, but the first of those is not why, it's who. It's who, then what, then when, then where, and then finally why. And I think the who that surrounds people is super important for everything that you're going to do. And that kind of translates into this next question is, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
I can answer that very simply. It's that you can lose all your money, and if you keep your integrity, somebody will always back you. But if you keep your money and sell out your integrity, you'll never get it back.
That's incredible. So
Okay.
where does Jay Abraham's story start?
It's simple, but it's quite profound. I was married at the age of 18 in Indianapolis. I had two children at 20. I had no navigable or negotiable education or skill set. The only people that would give me opportunity were impressive but really eclectic entrepreneurs who didn't give me a salary, but they gave me the opportunity to, pardon me, participate in the revenue and the productivity and the results I created. And when you only eat when you earn, you realize what works and what doesn't and what works best. But I also was never expected, nobody cared if I worked 12 hours or 12 seconds. They just cared about the results I delivered. So I became very diverse. At any given time, I would maybe have 5 or 6 activities going on.
Mm.
And as luck would have them, Henry, they all were in different industries. And after about 10 aggregate industries, I realized that people in industry A had no clue how people in industry B, C, D, E operated. They didn't have the same strategy, business model, revenue sourcing, distribution channels, anything. And I was able to take very common methodology from the few industries I'd already been in, combine them into hybrids, add them to industries I was now in, and a business just exploded. And everybody thought I was this brilliant uh, marketing savant when in fact I was nothing more than a one eyed man in the land of the blind and an emissary from other worlds. It was very simplistic, but it was very powerful. And then when I realized that, I built majestically on it. I ended up basically obsessing over learning everything I could about every industry I could, every marketing strategic approach I could, every mindset I could, every soft skill, every hard skill, every tactic. And that was 50 years ago almost. And now here I am today.
That's an incredible story. And it's something that I think is important for the viewers or listeners of this podcast to hear is that, you didn't come from money. You didn't come from a place of already my success is set up in front of me here. It was really built from the bootstraps and learning how to make things work, how to make a sale, how to market yourself and really build your own personal brand. As you're going through that process, were there times when you felt like you wanted to throw in the white towel?
Oh, sure. I mean, when I first started, I had no money. My wife and I had to live with my parents. The first, for 6 or 9 months, I was making almost nothing. The first time I got a apartment, I lost that then position, even though it was not a very stable one, and I had no car, and I was taking 3 buses home, and I was too embarrassed to go home. One time, not far after that, when we got a little bit ahead, I forgot to lock the car, and someone stole uh, the baby car seat, and I didn't have enough money to buy another one. I mean, then another time, early in the only job I went to move, I lived in Dallas for what was supposed to be my $1 million home run, and it turned out to be a bunch of scams that I got caught with no money, no friends, no anything. And the only job I could get, I lived in Denton, Texas, but I had to travel every Monday to Tulsa. That was the only job I could get and live in a horrible, horrible, horrible one little room with the money I had. And I could only afford to eat one time a day. And it was either a jar of personalized peanut butter or macaroni and cheese loaf. So I've done lots of things where it was horrific, relatively speaking, but you transcend it. And those experiences they forge your tensile strength. They make you strong. They make you resilient. They make you grateful, appreciative.
Absolutely. So what was it in those times that helped you build that tensile strength that you speak of?
I think it was in the beginning. I remember having a horrible depression, and then I realized nobody cares. They don't care if you're down for the count. They don't care if you dust yourself off. They don't care if you go on to victory and majesty. They don't care if you give up. They don't care if you reconcile yourself that you're a victim or you want to be a victor. It's up to you. Nobody cares. They're all self consumed, which is great. No one's going to keep you down but you.
Oh, that's powerful. Yeah. Everyone's worried about their own problems, their own situation, their own
Who
thing.
cares about what? I mean, you're free to do whatever you want, and if you want to use, and also that failure and reversal, they're really not negatives, they are learning experiences if you don't let them, they'll let them, excuse me, if you don't let them define you, and they need not. It's not permanent.
Absolutely. So, what is it that you found as you're growing and you're, like you said, taking one step ahead at a time? What were the tools that you learned in those early days that you're still using today that are making you successful?
Uh, okay, I would say hopeless curiosity, asking meaningful questions, listening, Socratic interviewing, and never believing that you are the smartest person in the room, wanting to be the dumbest, and really respecting and appreciating the value of every human being, whether they were the CEO of a big corporation or the janitor, and just appreciating humanity and having a degree of humility. I think those are probably good answers.
Absolutely. And throughout your lifetime in this business industry, you've really rocked the boat and shifted a strong culture. Do you feel like you're in a sense where you've made it, or are you still climbing?
It's interesting. I think every day human beings should see themselves as both a teacher and a student. There was a period of time where I literally and very, very clinically, not arrogantly, I owned on a worldwide basis the perch of being the definitive entrepreneurial business growth expert. I traveled 80 times. I've been, 20 sometimes to Tokyo, to Shanghai, Beijing, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, the UK, Switzerland. I've done this on a worldwide basis. And when the internet came in, young people like yourself are far more adroit technologically. I don't really like technology that much, but it is so essential and vital to our existence. So I have to play catch up. I'm a very private person. This is exception when I do things like this. You'll never see me personally post a picture. If I go to dinner or go out with Tony Robbins or Damon or anybody of iconic status, I would never share that. You'll never see me posting pictures with all my cars. I have a very nice collection, or my large home, or my beach house. I have them, but it's a very private and a very personal thing, and it's not something that I want to ever reveal. I think I don't. So I'm different. I'm not trying to win people. I don't need a million likes or whatever. I look for a quality of person that I can relate to. Most people come to me,
Yeah.
Henry, for master strategy and to be their long-term thinking partner on a much broader spectrum of business issues. I have no skill in just being a tactician. And I think that I'm probably very evolved in the one sense in understanding how to grow a business from many facets, but I'm very ignorant about technology and things. Young people they can run rings around me on things like funnels and Facebook and things like that. But in other forms, I have a lot of significance and sophistication.
Well, it's funny. That's one of my soapboxes a little bit. And I think technology and social media is a blessing and a curse in so many ways. But one of the challenges I see young people facing, and something I want to address with my audience, is you see folks who post those kinds of pictures of my new Lamborghini, dinner with Damon John, whatever it may be, and people see this millionaire, billionaire lifestyle and get wrapped around the axle of, oh, I have to have that, and not with the journey, not with the process, and understanding that they're on a path, and you have to be a good hundredaire and thousandaire before you can be a millionaire, right? And
No,
it really skews people's perspective.
I think that's profound, and I agree with you. I think that most people are very, very sadly and mistakenly focused on the end product. They delude themselves to think if they made $1 million or they had the biggest house or the most toys or the prettiest wife uh, or the fastest growing company, that achievement, that static achievement, alone is going to transform the quality and the happiness of their life, and the heavens are going to open, and the angels are going to trumpet, and nirvana is going to bestow on them. It's just another level of complexity, and it's very anticlimactic. And when you get things, I always said, because I've had, and I don't mind saying it, I've had about every kind of exotic car as you can imagine, and I had a very expensive Ferrari for a while, and I always said that the greatest thrill you get when you own one is the vicarious thrill you give somebody that drives by and wishes they owned it. It's hard to get in. It's very expensive to maintain. It's exorbitantly expensive to insure. When it breaks, you got to send a flatbed and it costs you a fortune. If you go to a restaurant, instead of giving the $3 tip, you give a $30 one because they're going to park it up front. If you park it too close in a marginal area, they'll key it. I mean, nothing is what you think. And you hit on it. And the real
Right.
meaning of life to me, and hopefully to a lot of people, and if this sort of shifts their belief system, it's the process. This conversation is as good as it gets, and it doesn't matter who you're having it with. They can be prominent, but everyone's significant, relevant, has dignity, and should be treated as such.
Absolutely. And it's something that, is a mindset shift or a paradigm shift for so many people, is to understand just exactly that. Significance and prominence are two completely different things. And
Yes,
really, neither one of them have to do with how many zeros are in your bank account.
touche. Yeah, I think that the human being, if you have an abiding love for humanity. Now, there are some bad players, and nothing you can do about that. But fundamentally, human beings are interesting people. We all have different hopes, dreams, challenges, aspirations. And the more you try to appreciate what it's like to be in somebody else's life, and you really have empathic respect, the more you can enjoy the process, because we're irrelevant, and really and truly the key to everything is to make every time. I believe this, every time you are in someone else's life, Henry, no matter how limited amount of time, it can be a minute, it can be hours, your privilege, your job, your obligation, your responsibility is to make that other person better off because you were in his or her life. Smile, listen, do something that's really meaningful, you know, anything. And I think it's very important.
Absolutely. And I actually, behind me here on the wall, have a copy of Christian Larson's Optimist Creed hanging on the wall. And
Okay.
one of the most important things you can do for somebody is make them feel like they have value.
I agree.
And if you make other people feel like they have value, you're going to be leagues ahead of everyone else in business and in life.
Well, if you think about this, and it's a pretty profound statement, it's not original to me. You're rewarded directly in life in direct association with the quantity, quality, and consistency of problems you solve and opportunities you make possible for others. And the more you do, the more often you do it, the more impactfully you do it. And impact is a relative term. Smiling at somebody can be profound. Taking the time to listen to somebody, acknowledging you heard them, it is thanking somebody, calling somebody who's never acknowledged as having relevance, sir, is quite profound. Doing things that don't denigrate people, and it feels really good. And if it doesn't, you really have your values out of alignment because it's not about you, it's about everyone else. And that's what gives you joy if you really understand it.
Yeah. And one of the things I talked about actually in the speech that I gave today was talking about Andrew Carnegie and how he was interviewed one time and asked, "How do you have 43 millionaires working for you?" And he said, "Well, they weren't all millionaires when they got here, but taking care of your people is a lot like mining for gold. You move a lot of dirt to find the gold."
Mhm.
And every person that you interact with, do you focus on the dirt? Do you focus on the challenges or the problems or the upsetting things, or do you recognize the fact that there's pure gold inside each and every person and you just have to move through and find it?
Yeah, no, is that a question or is that a statement?
Well, it's a little bit of both because how do you do that in business as you're trying to build strategy and you're helping these large organizations? There
Yeah,
are
I
oftentimes people that seem obstinate and in the way, but how do you recognize the gold that's there?
I start by trying to understand what got somebody to that place because I mean, with very little exception, there's a reason people are the way they are. There's a reason people come across the way they are. There's a reason that their values are the way they are. And it's usually a reason that you'd never really thought about. And when you understand it, I mean, I always said you have to first, excuse me, I'm opening my sparkling water. You have to first, you have to stop and first examine, evaluate, understand, and appreciate and acknowledge how everyone else sees life before they can see your perspective, because that's their reality. And if you want to deny it, if you want to go against the grain, if you're going to, oh, you're wrong, you're an idiot, first you want to say, I see your point, I understand it, and that's really interesting, and I can see, based on the facts that you presented, that that is a valid point on your part. Let me give you a counter, and let's see if maybe there's a half point. But most people are they're very rigid, and anytime I'm confronted with somebody in a business arena that is, I'll call it a dick. I don't consider most people dicks. I just go, let me try to understand what is driving this either attitude, commentary, coldness, rigidity, shield of trying to avoid vulnerability. And I just try to understand what's driving that, what brought them here, what's the backstory.
So as you're digging in with companies, how much of these explosive profits and the uncovered opportunities that you're uncovering, how much of them revolve around these, I hate the term soft skills, but human factors, and how much of them revolve around actual business strategy implementation?
I've never had that question asked. Oh, I don't know, uh, probably maybe 25, 75, in the order you said it. I mean, I'm very good at seeing correlations, implications, anomalies, things that you can quantify that others don't, connections that people don't, higher methodologies that people don't, things like that. But yeah, I look at performance enhancement, but we factor in soft skills. But I also look to help a business elevate themselves to a position of being preeminent. And preeminence is much beyond being prominent. And it's a whole different distinction. And it's an externally focused sort of a sense. It's a sense of being. It's a philosophical strategy that drives your business. But I do a lot of very high performance levers in a business that are just being underappreciated. So, a lot of things people do, they do at, instead of the highest level, they don't know this, but it's probably, instead of the highest and best performance, they do it at the least and worst, and they don't know any better. So just, it's not that hard to improve. We used to teach people the big business mistakes, and we realized the moment you stop making the mistakes, it multiplies performance. Even if you do nothing else, it gets rid of friction, it gets rid of diversion, it gets rid of inefficiency or non-productivity or underperformance. So it's very interesting.
We speak about preeminence, and I think that's something that's pretty unique to you and the work that you're doing. What is it that sets a company apart from being prominent to being preeminent?
Uh, I will do a disservice to it because it normally takes about 2 hours to answer the question with its full might and deserved. I'll call it gravitas, but the answer in a simplistic couple of denominations is, it's about establishing your business, your company, your team in the eyes of your market as being seen as the only viable choice somebody can make, the most trusted advisor for life. It's about having a commitment not to share information, but to share advice that you believe is in their best interest. And that means not letting somebody buy more than they should or less than they should, or even at all. It means not letting them buy less combination
Yeah.
or quantity or quality or less or frequency. It means putting into words what they're trying to really achieve and maybe doing it in a way that they've never heard it that way before. It's about having everybody in your organization being on a mission and a crusade in the betterment of the person or the organization that is your target prospect. It's about falling in love not with your business or your industry or your company or your product or your service, but falling in love with the clientele you serve
Mm.
and living with the appreciation that your product or service, when actively deployed in somebody's life or business, is making a constant, some kind of a transformatic impact, even if it's just making them laugh or it's making them feel safe or it's making them happy or it's making them, so happy because your food may taste so good or your pan cooks so well or whatever. It's having everybody feel like they're part of this crusade or mission, this transformatic mission, and having everybody feel relevant in that role, whether you're answering the phone and your job is to convey a a perspective or a positioning. It's got a lot of interesting things. It's about
Very well.
making your point through metaphors, similes, analogies, not unlike religion does with parables. It's about using truth in very honorable and powerful ways. It's got a lot of interesting facets, and it's about liberating yourself in a much more positively intoxicating way where you're playing at business and life at a level of significance, contribution, connectivity, and meaning well beyond those of anybody else you compete against, and you're having more fun because you're making a difference all the time.
Wow. So as you're saying those things, every single one of those things resonates as being something that most companies would like to have and want to have. But it seems to me that a lot just organically going about the day would miss some of those
Well, I think
things.
a lot, yeah, Henry, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, I'm going to use a golf metaphor, they play a short game. They're more interested in the moment rather than in tomorrow and forever. And if you can shift and play an integrative game, a lot of people in smaller businesses need today's sale. They're desperate, but you're going to need sales tomorrow and the next day, and relationships properly nourished and nurtured have the ability to pay off over and over again. And if you don't have anything else to sell, they can still pay off in testimonials and referrals or opportunities that will come. And I just think most people, they're unknowingly very shallow and very short-sighted in how they play the game of business.
Yeah, absolutely. You
They're
hit the
not
nail on the head.
tactical. Yeah, they're very tactical.
You see the tactical drive, but then on when it comes to strategy and long-term planning, you see things that are a mile wide and half an inch deep.
Yeah, that's very good analogy. Yeah, it's sad because they're always stressed. They're always playing the short game. They're always, it's very erratic, episodic, and I long ago stopped really operating in that world because it's a very stressful way to operate your life.
Absolutely. So I've got two burning questions that have come out of this, and one
Sure.
is how do you get companies to let you in the door and essentially hand over the reins? Because it's something that you have to establish trust very quickly with those business leaders. And the second piece of it is how do you plan for forever? And how do you develop that strategy to go on long term when we look at how rapidly changing and shifting our environment is? Just the COVID pandemic a couple of years ago
True. True.
There's so much change and uncertainty and volatility. How, as you're making this strategy, do you use that uncertainty and volatility as a positive?
Yeah. I think that it's a great question. My belief system is that number one, it's only a matter of time before people who should be collaborating, working with me or my clients will. And I'm not gonna wait for money to change hands before I start contributing, adding value, and really investing in a relationship. I know they don't all pay off, but I also know that if you don't invest, you'll never get reward. And a lot of
Mm,
people are afraid they're going to lose on their investment, so they don't even make it, which is sad. I enjoy everyone. There's nothing that, I mean, I don't like, some of the terrorists and the bad players in our world and our politics, etc. But I really like human beings at a high level. I ask very wonderful questions that are sincerely motivated by a desire to really understand the answer. I think that if I could, just being clinical, not arrogant, I'm very good at intention. So if I ask you a question, it's because I really want to know the answer. I'm not trying to just engage you in queuing up the next thing I'm going to try to bombard you to control the conversation. I'm very reflective when I hear an answer. I'm very deep about trying to understand what that meaning is and project the depth behind it. And as far as that answer has a life to it, there's things going on that answer relates to. I'm very into the other side, and I always make it a point, and it's very automatic now that I want you to know that I heard what you said. It had meaning. I ask advanced questions based on that, so I can understand it. And I think the first thing comes from I have hopeless curiosity. I'm just fascinated with about anything you can imagine and everyone. And when instead of being so rigid that you only want to talk about what you want to talk about, it's sad. I would bet anything that the vast majority of people who deal in selling with people, either on the phone, in person, they don't know squat about the other person other than that very limited application to the transaction they're doing. They don't understand it's a man, woman, husband, wife, father, mother, friend, son, daughter that has hopes, dreams. They don't know what their life's about. They don't even think about it. They're very superficial in the way they want to have a relationship, and that's not where richness comes from.
wow. Yeah, there's so much, and you can sense it on people's faces of I'm listening to respond, not listening to understand.
That is right.
And the process of genuine curiosity has gotten me a long ways, and otherwise a 34-year-old young man probably wouldn't have books from Orison Swett Martin hanging out on my bookshelf back here, and some of these.
Exactly. No, you impress me as somebody who has good values. I would just say that I think everyone needs to do a constant reality check. I am driven by a derivative of Socrates. I love Socratic interviewing. Socrates had a saying, and I'm going to probably abuse it, and I'll just paraphrase it. He said, "A life unexamined is a life not worth living." I believe that a business that's not constantly examined for your beliefs, your assumptions, your reality that might be skewed is a business not worth owning. And I don't think most people really examine it on the kind of basis that you really should. They don't look at it CAT scan holistically all over the place. What are my beliefs? What are my values? What are my assumptions? How do I come across? Do I command trust? Do I really grow people? Am I a multiplier of people? Am I a diminisher? I mean, there's all kind. I can go into a multitude, a myriad of perspectives because I've been influenced by people far, far brighter and more elevated in their understanding than I.
So as you're looking at those things and you're digging in on these companies, I had three or four pieces of advice for the audience that are listening that are looking to evaluate and understand and be curious about themselves and their own company to take it to that next level of strategy. What would you offer?
Well, I mean, I would say that understand variability, that uh, There are many drivers in a business that most people don't even understand. There are KPIs, and there are what I'll call OPIs, opportunity performance indicators, that nobody understands. There's only a handful of KPIs, but there's lots of sub leverage points in between. If you think about your life, your personal life, Henry, and all those people watching you, it's been dramatically enhanced by levers: wheelbarrows, screwdrivers, brooms, light switches, car jacks, cranks that open windows and close them, push buttons that open a door, pop top cans. But in business, you have an enormous amount of under recognized levers, each one of which can profoundly multiply the performance of anything you do, revenue generating, uh, operationally, and most people don't understand that. So, and variability. We've tested a different way of articulating a proposition and tripled the results. We've tested changing a headline in an ad or the equivalent subject line, signage at a trade show, and we've gotten as much as 5 times greater response. We've tested how you greet somebody at the front door at a very large furniture store, and we tested 33 ways one time, and one of them tripled conversion. We've tested changing the positioning and doubled or tripled response. We've tested changing how you prove your premise with testimonials, with comparability, contrast, endorsements, things like that, and double response. We've tested risk reversal. There's 4 or 5 ways to do it, sometimes multiplied response another 75%. We've tested bonuses and sometimes double. We've tested the price you offer, and sometimes we'd seen a higher price outpull a lower one, or a 15 outpull a 19, but not by a little bit, sometimes 500%. And if you don't understand that, first of all, you're losing out. I am known, I guess, worldwide for being someone who really understands how to work on the geometry of the business. I created the 3 ways to grow a business years ago, and most people work on the first one, generating more buyers. But if you concurrently try to ethically get the buyer to spend more each time, that'll help them. You might not double the revenue, but you will definitely double or triple the profit per transaction. If you get him to come back more often, again, ethically, because you've got reasons that will benefit them, or get more utility value out of the relationship, selling them other complementary things, you can double, redouble again the value they're worth. I created the Power Parthenon, and you should like this because it's based on militaristic thinking. Its force multiplier effect basically expanded to revenue generation and business sourcing, and I can go into it some other time deeply, but I've got lots of things like that. It's not one thing, because I'm about, again, the holistic integration of the totality of growing a business and sustaining the business and multiplying the performance of the business. And there's a lot of factors.
Absolutely. Wow. I have so many curious questions and not enough time, so we will have to reconvene. And thank you so much for coming on today. And as we close out, where can people find you and your resources?
Well, I mean, we have a website, abraham.com, which is a lot of goodies there. And I privately work with a lot of people, but not a lot. I mean, like 50 clients at a time. And if they wanted ever to explore that, but I would make an interventional point. I'm not inexpensive. I get a very large retainer against profit shares, but they can always reach me at jay@abraham.com if there's something of opportunity. But we give a lot of goodies away, and I mean, there's a lot of videos already up on YouTube that are very long, and we got them from years before. They're classic. We got them current stuff. We got a podcast that is very eclectic, that's called The Ultimate Entrepreneur, and it doesn't even, I don't think I've ever run an ad in it for myself. So people probably abuse it using ads around it. But yeah, so I mean, a lot of stuff out there. We've got books and everything that are probably freely disseminated. Everybody's knocked off all my programs over the years, so you could probably put my name in and find 12 interlopers and rapscallions and unethical people giving it away, and it's all out there. So you can find me a lot of ways.
Thanks so much for coming on. I'll definitely put links in the show notes to some of your resources. Jay has many things on his website, masterminds, different groups. He's not inexpensive, but if you want the best out there, find Jay Abraham. Thanks so much.
Thank you. What a pleasure. I hope I added value.
Absolutely. Did you like what you heard on today's podcast? If so, do me a quick favor and hit the like and subscribe button. That way you'll stay updated on all the new content that I publish. Also, visit me on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and tell me what you want to hear more about. I love to hear your comments. That way I can continue to produce content that you love and enjoy. You can also check out my website, henrybeeman.com.